It's the kind of silence that doesn't need sound to be deafening. A quiet that falls over a family, a community, and a television audience who never expected the stillness to come this way or this soon. One minute, he was a young man with a steady voice, a soft spot for stray animals, and a future waiting to unfold. And then, everything stopped. Hey everyone, I'm Helena, and you're watching TLC's Sister Wives News. If this is your first time here, thank you for joining us. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. It really helps the channel, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below because this one's going to be heavy. Garrison Brown, the son of Janelle and Kody Brown, was never the loudest presence on Sister Wives. But for those who watched closely, he was one of the most genuine, loyal, observant, deeply compassionate, especially when it came to animals, particularly cats. He didn't chase the spotlight, but somehow his light made its way into every corner of the show where love still lived. Now, fans are left grappling with a painful reality. Garrison is gone. And not just gone, but gone in the most devastating way. And as the show moves forward without him, viewers are asking the question no reality series is ever truly prepared to answer. When a real tragedy enters the story, who handles it with care? And who uses it to push the plot? Today, we're walking through the grief, the grace, and the quiet resistance. The mother who mourns in private, the son who saved more lives than we realized, and the complicated truth about how Sister Wives chose to tell his story. Let's get into it. Garrison Brown was just 25 years old when the unthinkable happened. In March 2024, the news hit. Garrison, the fourth child of Janelle Brown and the eighth of Kody Brown's 18 children, had passed away. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't sudden illness, it was suicide. And it left not just his family, but thousands of fans who had watched him grow up on Sister Wives, completely stunned. He was never the loudest or most confrontational on the show. If anything, Garrison often came across as a steady, grounded presence in a family that has been anything but stable over the years. He was practical, warm, and carried himself with a quiet kind of confidence. You'd see him joke with his siblings, help out around the house, and more often than not, he'd be sharing a moment with a pet in his arms. The guy had a soft spot for animals, especially cats, and it wasn't just for show. It was who he was. Janelle once described how often they spoke, 3 times a day sometimes, morning, midday, and evening. They weren't just mother and son. They were each other's emotional touchstones. She knew he was struggling. She didn't sugarcoat that when speaking about his final days. She admitted that he'd been battling depression, that there were signs he wasn't doing well, but she also held out hope that her support, her love, her being there constantly would be enough. In one heartbreaking moment on the show, Janelle recalled texting him, just like she always did. But this time, there was no answer. And when Gabriel, one of her other sons, came to her with the words, "Mom, he's gone," she was frozen. "What do you mean?" she asked. And then he said it. He's dead. There's a blank space in Janelle's voice when she talks about that moment. The way grief steals time. She said she didn't remember the next few minutes, just that she got into her car and started driving. It didn't feel real, not yet, but it was. Her son, the one who once brought home baby birds and hurt squirrels just so they'd be safe, the one who lit up around rescue cats and dreamed of building a calm, independent life away from the chaos, was gone. It's so easy for people to assume that those who smile or stay strong are okay. But what Garrison's story shows is that pain can live quietly, even behind the most genuine of eyes. And even with all the love in the world, sometimes it's not enough to quiet the hurt someone carries inside. Janelle said she always made it a point to call him, to check in, to be there. And you can hear it in her voice, the what-ifs, the guilt, the ache of a mother who tried everything. He just couldn't keep up, she said, even though we were doing everything we could. That line sits heavy, because it's not just about loss, it's about powerlessness, about love meeting something it can't fix. And that's where Garrison's final chapter truly begins. Garrison's story doesn't end with grief. As painful as his passing was, what came after revealed something remarkable, a legacy that no one could have scripted, but everyone could feel. It turns out, the quietest parts of Garrison's life, the things he wasn't loud about on TV, were the ones that made the biggest impact. Anyone who followed Garrison on Instagram before his passing knew about his love for cats. Not just any cats either. He had a thing for the forgotten ones, the old, the overlooked, the ones no one else wanted to adopt. There was Buttons, a 9-year-old gray cat with weary eyes and a calm spirit. Garrison had adopted her not long before his death, and she was featured in one of his last posts. He even joked that his savior complex made it impossible for him to walk away from her. That wasn't a throwaway line. That was his heart talking. He felt for those animals. He saw them, and he wanted them to feel safe before their time was up. Then there were his other 2 cats, Patches and Katu, each with their own stories, each a little thread in the fabric of his gentle, nurturing spirit. Fans were always taken aback by how deeply he connected with these animals. He wasn't just a pet owner, he was a protector, and that love didn't fade when he died. In one of the most moving moments of Sister Wives Season 19, viewers saw Janelle walk into the Flagstaff Humane Society, the place where Garrison had adopted many of his cats. What was supposed to be a visit turned into something sacred. As she stepped into the office, she saw something that stopped her cold. Pictures of Garrison on the walls, photos of him with cats in his arms, laughing, full of life. Then came the plaque, a small but powerful tribute. The shelter had honored Garrison by placing a brass plate on the wall with his name, surrounded by some of his favorite moments. It read something like, "For the one who gave the voiceless a home and a second chance." That's when Janelle broke. You could see her trying to hold it together, trying to stay composed, but the tears came. And they weren't just about missing him. They were about pride, about seeing how her son's compassion didn't just touch her, it touched an entire community. One of the shelter staff members shared with her that since Garrison's death, people from all over had donated in his name. Over $25,000 had been raised, enough to care for countless cats. The foundation created in his honor became a real force for good. Not just a name, not just a memory, but action. Food, medicine, safe spaces. Garrison's love was now saving lives in real time. Janelle said she believed her son would have been thrilled to know how much good had come from his story. And it's hard not to agree. Even though he's gone, Garrison is still rescuing animals, still comforting strays, still making people feel something real. His kindness outlived him, and that's the kind of legacy few people ever get to leave behind. One of the hardest parts of watching Sister Wives this season was seeing Janelle's grief play out in real time. It wasn't dramatized. It wasn't exaggerated. It was just real. A mother crushed by a loss so profound you could feel it through the screen. She talked about how she found out, and it was absolutely gut-wrenching. One of Garrison's brothers had called her, panicked, saying no one could get a hold of him. That silence, that sudden stillness in the day was Janelle's first sign something was wrong. And when the police confirmed what no parent should ever hear, everything changed. She described that moment not with theatrical tears or dramatic pauses, but with a kind of numbness that only comes from the deepest pain. What stood out most was how she carried that grief. Quietly, privately, respectfully. Even while filming, Janelle protected Garrison. She chose her words carefully. She didn't speculate. She didn't point fingers. She focused on who he was, what he loved, and the memories she would carry with her. There's something so powerful about that kind of grace. But then the tone of the show shifted. As other family members started speaking about Garrison, fans noticed something that didn't sit right. The way the show edited certain moments felt off. Not entirely disrespectful, but somehow disconnected, especially when it came to Kody and Robin. Let's talk about that garage moment, because it caused a wildfire online. In one scene, Kody is shown putting up Garrison's photo in the garage, not the living room, not a special place in the house, the garage. It wasn't even framed properly. It was taped up, like a flyer or a reminder note. Fans were stunned. People on Reddit, TikTok, and Facebook were asking the same thing. Why would a father place his son's photo in a space that feels so cold, so unceremonious? It didn't feel like a tribute. It felt like an afterthought. The backlash was immediate and fierce. Some viewers were heartbroken. Others were angry. Many called it tone deaf, and there were dozens of posts accusing the production team of failing to handle Garrison's memory with the care it deserved. Some even questioned if Kody understood the depth of his son's pain before he passed, or if he was only now trying to rewrite the story on camera. Meanwhile, Janelle stayed grounded. She never lashed out, never blamed, never tried to control the narrative. She just mourned. She visited the Humane Society, she shared stories, she lit a candle. While the show sometimes felt like it was trying to script a tidy arc around an untidy tragedy, Janelle refused to perform her grief. She just lived it. And maybe that's what made the difference. In a season where so much felt manufactured or manipulated, her love for Garrison stood out as the one thing that was unmistakably real. As this season of Sister Wives continued, something became painfully clear to longtime viewers. Grief was being filmed, edited, and shaped into story arcs, and that sat uncomfortably with a lot of us. Because Garrison's death wasn't a twist. It wasn't a mid-season shocker to keep ratings up. It was real. It was devastating. And to many fans, it started to feel like the show was treading dangerously close to using a young man's tragedy as just another plot point. There were moments that felt deeply personal, like Janelle's quiet reflection, Christine's heartbreak, or the somber visit to the animal shelter. But then there were scenes that felt too composed, too framed, like someone behind the camera was asking, "What can we get from this?" rather than, "How do we honor him?" And viewers noticed. One of the most talked about issues was the behavior of Robin and Kody. Let's be honest here. Fans didn't just feel disappointed, they felt angry. Cody's words about Garrison were often vague, almost deflective. He spoke more about the strained relationships in the family than about Garrison himself. He referenced distance and pain, but he didn't share real memories or insight into who Garrison truly was. There was a hollowness to it that left viewers cold. Robin's screen time added another layer of discomfort. Her tears didn't land the way they were probably meant to. Instead of showing someone mourning a stepson, it looked, at least to many fans, like she was mourning the drama within the family more than the loss of the person. Her comments seemed to center around the family falling apart, but rarely circled back to Garrison as an individual, as a son, as a real person. Then came the rumors. Circulating online from fan communities and alleged insider accounts, whispers began that TLC had initially wanted to film Garrison's military funeral, but the Brown children put their foot down. They said no. They didn't want cameras there, and honestly, can you blame them? That line, between honoring someone and putting their final goodbye on display for millions, was one they weren't willing to cross. It spoke volumes. The children, the siblings, those who lived the loss, drew a boundary that the show didn't seem capable of setting on its own, and that right there is the core of this tension. The people who truly knew Garrison were grieving, quietly, personally. They weren't trying to produce a segment, they were trying to survive it. But those behind the lens, or those who've become more characters than family, seemed to move forward as if this loss could be folded into the season's script. Some fans even questioned whether certain scenes were filmed out of sequence or selectively edited to frame certain narratives about who was hurting and who was trying to save face. The disconnect was heartbreaking, because for so many of us watching, Garrison wasn't just one of the kids. He was someone we saw grow up. Someone who made us laugh, who showed quiet strength, who loved cats and wore his heart in little gestures. And it hurt to see his passing turned into a storyline rather than a true tribute. In the quiet moments after the cameras pulled back, something deeply human shone through, not in the show's carefully edited scenes, but in the small, loving choices made by those who really knew Garrison. Choices that didn't require fanfare or scripted confessionals. Choices rooted in love. After Garrison's passing, the fate of his beloved cats, Buttons, Patches, and Katu, became more than just a footnote. These weren't just pets. They were his companions, his comfort, a window into the gentleness of a young man who often kept his pain tucked away. And it was Aspen and Mitch who stepped forward to adopt Buttons, the older cat with special needs, ensuring she'd spend the rest of her life in safety and care. It was an act that spoke louder than any on-screen tribute. It said, "We remember him. We protect what he loved." Logan and Michelle, too, embraced the responsibility without hesitation. They made space in their lives and home for the other cats, giving them a soft place to land. These weren't grand gestures made for television. They were quiet ones, off camera, filled with intention and heart. In the midst of overwhelming grief, they found a way to carry Garrison's love forward. And that's what legacy really is, isn't it? Not how long you're on screen, but how deeply you're remembered in the things and people you touched. Janelle's side of the family didn't just mourn, they acted. They showed up for one another. They carried his memory in actions that didn't require applause, from fundraising that raised over $25,000 for the Humane Society, to the plaque at the shelter honoring Garrison's heart for rescue animals. Every step told us who he really was. This wasn't about who cried the hardest on camera or who had the most airtime. It was about who continued loving him, even when no one was watching. And for so many viewers, that's where the truth lived, in the unspoken grief, the quiet loyalty, and the strength it takes to keep going. Janelle showed us a different kind of mourning, one that didn't need to be performative, one that allowed space for silence, for tears, for honoring a son the way only a mother can. What Garrison left behind wasn't just sorrow. It was a call to be kinder, to check in with the ones who seem fine, to listen when someone says they're struggling. His life, and yes, his loss, reminded people that mental health is not just a conversation for hashtags or headlines. It's real, and it's time we treat it with the depth and compassion it deserves. So as we close this chapter, I want to hear from you. How did this season make you feel? Do you believe reality shows can ever handle real grief respectfully, or is it too easy for tragedy to become just another storyline?